There are two primary ways to install snowFlaKe into your Vue content installation and be able to access all of the tools directly within Vue's function editor. Now, this folder we have here is the primary or the top level directory that you'll find after downloading and unzipping snowFlaKe, or what you will find on the DVD. The files themselves and the actual metanodes can be found within the snowFlaKe version 3 folder. Within this folder there are two different main folders. We've got the installation, and this is the primary installation for the current version. The Z archive prior versions is all of the versions prior to version 3, or the current release number. So this is helpful for users that have been using snowFlaKe since it was originally called the MetaNode collection, version 1, and then was later called snowFlaKe at version 2. So for backwards compatibility with different scenes, in order to be able to use some of the previous tools, if you had certain scenes set up, every single version of each node that has been released is available within the Z archive. This is helpful too if you're going to upgrade an installation, because then you can overwrite your current installation of the files, because you will be able to go and access them. Unless you have modified any of the unlocked nodes, then you'll want to make sure that you back those up, maybe give them a different name. So going into the installation folder, there are two types or two ways you can install this. The content install method is suggested. It's the best way to organize everything because of the amount of tools and nodes that are available with snowFlaKe. To access these tools directly within Vue, you'll need to find your content installation folder. So with Vue open, you can go to File and Options, and if you go to the Operations tab, you'll find the Vue content folder. You can go to Edit, and that's going to show you its location on your computer. And I do have mine installation currently open. This is my content directory. So anything you place into these different directories will show up within the function editor. I'm going to go ahead and show you just how that's going to work. What we'll do is just go into a material function. So now if I right click, we can see the main groups of nodes. Beyond this level, or directory level, the MetaNode folders won't show up, so they will have to be contained within these top level directories. In other words, the filter nodes have an environment sensitive, recursive, and those categories will not go any deeper into the folder structure. If we go into filter, if I was to add an environment sensitive folder, it's not going to show up within the interface. But everything within filter, we can go to metanodes, and then it's going to show every single file you have within that group. So inputs, metanodes. So the best way to install, because some of these directories do have metanodes that come with Vue. Of course, you might have also created your own, so you want to make sure you're not overwriting the folders. The best thing to do is drag and drop per folder, and this is for the content install. So we would go into content install and then the metanodes, and now we are also in the metanode directory of the content Vue installation. So we can go into color and grab all of these, copy them, and then you would want to paste them in. Now I've already got the latest version installed, so I'm not going to go and overwrite anything. If you're upgrading from a previous version, you can overwrite any of the prior snowFlaKe tools, because you will be able to go into the Z archive if you need to pull out any of the previous versions. There's also, you'll find a beta folder. These are not installed automatically. or contained within any specific group. If you want to give them a try, you can bring them into any of the folders where you want to access them. These nodes still have a few kinks to be ironed out. The color and bump controller, if you're using a slower system, I would not suggest using it to create materials. And the grid lock texture sequence auto controller for the sectional gridlock group of metanodes, it does work quite well, but only within certain mapping modes. So it is somewhat restricted at the moment because there is currently an issue with the UV map, or the unscaled UV map, and the way the scale is returned to the material. So just one thing to pay attention. And ramp Y is just something very simple. It just creates a descending slope along the Y-axis. Useful for working with procedural terrains, but it's a little finicky just with the number outputs not being as defined within the node itself. Other than that, it works just fine. You don't need to worry about actually running into bugs or anything. It's just a matter of the inputs you type in to control the values might not work or be defined as you type them in. So those are there if you want to try them out. Now, if you have been using snowFlaKe since version 2 or 1.5, since version 2.1, the snowFlaKe host node has been discontinued. With the amount of information contained within the host node, and for those of you that don't know what that is, what I'll go ahead and do is go into the archive and grab the host snowFlaKe node and add it to my input nodes so we can take a look at it. Add an input node, MetaNode, snowFlaKe. This is a container for every node within the collection. The setups and helpers, the color, dynamics, numeric. This way you could go into the functions in these individual groups and pull out the nodes you need, copying and pasting them out of the node or ungrouping them in order to get them in. The collection is much larger now than it was at this point, and because of just overall stability, because of the file size within the function editor, there's just too much information being calculated, so it does kind of slow things down. So that is currently discontinued until further updates, or you can find a better way to organize them. However, a lot of nodes are contained within MetaNode containers, nodes that are very similar to each other or within the same groups. There are quite a few of these, and it really helps reduce the amount of nodes showing within the MetaNode folder, because there are just about 150 metanodes and tools with the current 3.0 release. The snowFlaKe manual will show exactly which of these nodes are contained within containers. If we take a look at one, this is the decomposers. We can open that up, and now all of the decomposers are contained within one node. So if you want one specific one, you can Control-C to copy, or you can go up to the top and copy it, and then you can paste it into the function you're working in and delete the container. So it's just an easier way to access specific nodes. If we go to the input nodes, metanodes, it would the combiner group, metanodes. There's a couple of different setups here. We have setups and helpers. There's some kind of node setups can be pretty helpful in here. Dependents you can just copy and paste out very quickly. Filter chains, color corrections, and also if we go back, some of the new release tools like Time Morpher, we have the Auto Additional, and this has 4 modified version of Time Morpher specifically customized for the control that you want to transition between or morph between color, a number setup, dual texture coordinate setup, and vector setup. The time morpher auto node contains color, vector, number all in one. But when you have a very large function that uses several of these time morpher nodes, because they are meant to be plugged into each other within chains, which there are several morph chains also available. These other ones are cleaned up for more of a specific need, rather than passing through all this additional information and controlling all of these other outputs. So it's just another way to kind of reduce the amount of resources needed. If we go into the time morpher chains, there's a couple of different chain setups. We have color, numeric, vector, and a vector dependency chain. So if you're going to be using time morpher to go between different objects and external dependencies, this is already set up for you. So you can go into the morph settings and then just change the external dependencies. You can go ahead and copy and paste this out, so you've got a nice morph chain with 5 different dynamic keyframes based on objects and vectors. And then there's also a color chain setup, of course the number, and then also the vector chain. So those are very useful for quick setups of the time morpher. And you'll find that when you go to load in some of these nodes, you'll see that there won't be really any inputs or outputs, and it'll just say under the description, ungroup or open to access the nodes, and those are the containers. You'll also find the other installation method is the content install one group. Basically, this is one folder with every single MetaNode and also the containers all in one folder. Some people like to access everything all at once. So what you could do is add this to one of the folders that does not have any metanodes in it. There are no fractal metanodes within the installation of Vue, and there aren't any specific fractals within that folder for snowFlaKe version 3. Since a metanode is technically a combiner node, you could add them to your combiner nodes. So that way what you can do is go into the menu, the MetaNode menu, and it's going to show every single node within this folder. It is a bit bulky. There are 109 objects in here, so 109 nodes. Most of those, or several of them, are containers for different nodes. So the content installation, the content install is definitely suggested, just because it's a lot quicker to get between different groups and get an idea of exactly what nodes do. Even though most of the nodes within snowFlaKe do tend to apply to several of these different groupings. A lot of the combiner nodes are really advanced dynamics nodes, so it's just kind of a way to organize certain things. If you are upgrading from version 2, you will find that the organization has changed a bit, along with those containers for some of the larger groups of nodes from the previous version. So whether or not you want to do a full new install of everything or just overwrite the other files and keep your same setup, you can of course move them around to wherever you want. References for the training are going to refer to the content install method, and the manual itself will refer to those specific locations. If you want to learn more about snowFlaKe, you can check out the included training. Several hours of training included for a lot of the new nodes, and creating some pretty cool things with the new tools. You can also check out the user's manual, which has a lot of techniques and overviews, along with important setup information. The snowFlaKe manual is organized with the content install method for the individual nodes. Also, they are organized with the subdirectories. So even though the installation doesn't have these directories, they are organized like this in the manual, just so you can understand what's a vector operation, what would apply to randomness, conversions within the math nodes. environment sensitive filters, color correction and color. So there's only a couple of groups that actually have these separate groups. And the installation itself, they're all going to be in color, and there is no color correction folder, but it's just an easier way to understand what the different nodes do and what they're used for. So you can go ahead and click on any of these to be taken to that category, which is going to take you to the index for that section. And then you can select any of the nodes to read about them. And a cool and useful part of the PDF that you'll find on the bottom of every single page is the ability to link yourself to the contents menu or to go straight to the node index. The node index is alphabetical order. That's going to show every single node within the current release. Also, it's going to show you if any nodes you're looking for are in containers. You will find them slightly offset within the node index, and all of the containers are in brackets within the node index. You know that that is a container for those metanodes. All new nodes are noted with a black snowflake icon image here on the left, and the white snowflakes are updated tools. So tools that have had enough of a change from the previous version to really take a look at the manual and see what has changed. Just keeping in mind that it may not work exactly the way as it used to between the different versions of Vue. So if something has been updated from the prior version, it is going to be the white snowflake. A couple of tools have been replaced by newer tools, and you'll find those within some of the notes. We also have some of the different nodes are archived. So some of the ones that are replaced are in the archives, and these are MetaNodes, so you can access the archived Dynamics nodes. Some of them are just out of date and are needed in the current version, although in some cases they can still be somewhat useful. And if you were working with these nodes in a previous version, and then you load in a scene with those previous nodes and now they don't work in the current version, you'll be able to at least access the node and take a look and see what changes need to be made in order to correct anything that has gone wrong or changed between the different versions of Vue. For the most part, everything transferred really well. There were only one or two tools that needed to be changed, mostly because of the new unit system. But overall, everything still works properly from prior versions. And any of the nodes that weren't working properly in 9 have been updated to work. There is also several scenes that are included with snowFlaKe and example scenes. That's all going to be found under the project content folder. And what you can do is just merge that with your current content. What I would suggest doing is just dragging the project content folder into, say, your scene folder, and then if you need to load in scenes or any graphs or functions that are provided with, when you add a collection, say if I was to go ahead and load a material, you would make sure everything is unlocked, add a new collection, and then you can just choose that project content folder and just that top level folder for everything, and Vue will automatically pick out what is relative to the current browser. So it's a little bit easier to organize things that way. If you run into any problems with the collection or you have any questions, I would definitely suggest doing a search through the manual, because there's a lot of information in there and something you might overlook. And if that doesn't work for you, feel free to go ahead and contact us at AsilFX on our website, asilfx.com or asilfx.net, ASILEFX. You'll also find additional training and content for Vue and other software applications on the AsilFX site.